Well, again, everyone, welcome to Theodore Turley Family Organization semi-annual meeting. We try to meet the week right after conference, the Saturday right after conference. And we have an opportunity today to just talk about some of the hot topics going on in the family research and talk about have presentation on some of the history of our family too. So let's kick things off with an opening prayer. My sister Ann Davis in Boise, Idaho is going to say our opening prayer. We'll go ahead and start with that.
Our Father in heaven, we're so grateful this morning to gather together as family members, and we're grateful for the strength that the gospel is in our lives and for our ancestors who bind us together. We're grateful for all those who put in the effort to make this meeting happen, and pray that we can all feel thy spirit and the connectedness that comes. We love thee and pray for these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Okay. Well, we're going to have an opportunity shortly. Actually, I think now is a great opportunity to for people to introduce themselves who are new to the call or haven't attended, let's say, in the prior 2 times. So if you haven't attended in 2023 or 2024, we'd love to have you reintroduce yourselves. So again, my name's Ted Piper. I'm serving as the president right now of the Theodore Turley Family Organization. As we introduce ourselves, it's great to give your descendancy. So I'm descended through Marguerite Romney Piper, my grandmother. My father's Walter Piper. Her mother was Frances Turley. Her father was Isaac Turley. And of course, his father was Theodore Turley. And I have to have Marianne remind me, or my other relatives remind me every time. Francis is not through Sarah Greenwood, it's through his other wife.
Yep, Clara Ann Tolton.
Clara Ann Tolton, of course, Clara Ann Tolton. So we're from the Tolton line. So I'm just going to go around the screen and see if there's people that I haven't met in the last year or two and have us introduce ourselves. I see a gentleman with the name Colleen on the screen. Are you on mute? I can't hear you.
He's not on mute, but we tried to have him introduce himself earlier and we weren't getting the sound through.
Okay, so if you could put it in the chat, just say what your name is and how you're related to Theodore Turley. We're glad to have you on the call. I'm glad you can hear us. And then I see the Bushmans on the call, Darla. And Marianne, maybe you should lead this because you're better aware of who's been on the call in the last year and a half. And you can pick out new people better than I can.
Okay, I'll try to
Is Darla new to the call too?
No, she's actually been here before.
Yeah.
And her husband is John Bushman, and they are from the Theodore Wilford Turley line, which was Sarah Greenwood. Jeannie Roberts is new to the call, and she is also from Theodore Wilford.
You want to introduce yourself, Jeannie? I forgot to say I'm in Boulder, Colorado, so please tell us where you're calling in from too.
Hi, Jeannie Roberts. I live in Mesa, Arizona. So Don, Harvey, Theodore Wilford, Isaac, Theodore.
Great, thank you. Marianne, who else do you see next?
Well, we've got your sisters, Shannon,
I got 3 of them, plus a nephew. Yes. Let's do the Piper
Hi,
crowd.
I'm Shannon. I'm Ted's older sister. Theodore, Tolton, Isaac, Marguerite.
Yep.
Walter, me. Is that right?
Yep.
And I live in Mesa.
Wonderful.
Muting now.
Okay, thanks. Thank you so much for being on the call. Let's go Ann Davis, who gave our opening prayer, and then Lee Marriott, I think I saw on the call too. Ann's on mute. Well, she gave our opening prayer. You got to meet her through that. She's in Boise, and we're on the same line, of course. Tanner, are you with your mom? Tanner's my nephew, through my sister Lee. You want to go on mute? Oh yeah, they're walking together. You guys want to say hi?
We are on a walk. Sorry, we're outside. You might hear some cars, but I'm Ted's nephew. My mom's Lee here.
Hi.
Hey.
And and Ted can do our lineage again.
Yeah, I tried to do as well as I could, but yeah, we're all from the same line.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Ted.
I also see from the Francis Turley line, actually, from our same line, Mike Mullen, who's been with us on this call before, but it's been a couple times, I think. Mike, you want to reintroduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I'm Ted's cousin. We're descended from Isaac Turley and Francis Turley. My grandfather is Gordon Romney. My mother is Sherry Romney Mullen, and I'm in El Paso, Texas. It has been a couple of years since I've been on here. Saw Ted and his sisters. How long has that been, Ted, since your father passed away?
Oh, yeah, that was in 2021.
Was it?
Yeah.
It's good to see you guys again.
You too. Thank you for being on the call. Marianne, who else do you see that's new or returning?
That's newer. Oh, let's see. We have someone that's Laura's iPhone. Do you want to introduce yourself? I don't recognize you from being on the call.
Hi, my name's Laura Pedrero and I'm in West Jordan. And my family line is from Theodore to Isaac. And then Anna Priscilla Turley Van Wagner. And then my mother, Shirley Van Wagner Dunn, and then myself. So it's good to meet some of you. Glad to be
Yeah.
here.
So yeah,
Me
so
too.
Carolyn is also Anna Priscilla. So
She's my
Do you-
sister.
okay.
She can introduce herself though.
Okay, and then we've got I'm excited because Christine Turley Smith is here, and I don't think she's been on the calls before. Or have you just been like on the phone call and not visual?
I haven't been on the videos before. I've been
Okay.
to meetings years ago. So I'm from Isaac and Theodore. Same line
Okay.
as you, Hiram.
Yes, it's Hiram. So he was a brother of Theodore Wilford and George Albert from Isaac Turley's first wife. Okay, we've got Justin Cutler. I think might be your first.
Yes, this is my first time. Similar to Laura, I am from Theodore and Isaac to Anna Priscilla, and then Grace Maxine was my grandmother. So that's my line.
Okay. And then let's see. Robert Cushing, I'm not familiar with. Have we had him on before?
New to
Or
me.
he's muted, but I'm not sure. And then we've also got Kay Blanc. So if Kay Blanc wants to sorry,
Hi.
you had to run over.
Got me running. So I am Karen Brinkerhoff Blanc, and my grandma is Rhoda Turley, who was married to Levi Brinkerhoff, and her dad was Alma. Alma and Delilah
Okay.
were her parents, and then Theodore and Francis were her great-grandparents, her grandparents.
Nice. So you're from Alma Rubin, so you should know. Do you know Ruben Turley Judd, who's going to be coming in supposedly and doing a presentation?
Oh no, I don't.
Okay. Alma Rubin does have a lot of descendants. Alma Rubin, Hiram, and I'm trying to think who else. Charlotte Turley obviously has a lot of descendants too. So those are some of our bigger lines, I will say. Okay, we have a new person, Sarah, and not enough information for me to tell if she's been on here before. So if she wants to unmute, otherwise I think most of the other people are regulars. So we've got a good healthy mix of both from Isaac Turley's first wife and also Isaac Turley's second wife here. So Ted, do you want to just go ahead?
Yeah, we're so grateful to have all of you on the call. It's great to get together virtually. This meeting until a few years ago, really, I guess the pandemic really pushed us into the virtual realm. But until a few years ago, it was always in person in Salt Lake. And most of us on this call probably wouldn't have had the opportunity to join. So it's a great way to get together as distant cousins and close family too. And we're spread all over. I know some of you didn't say where you were from, but I know we have people in Texas, Utah, Arizona, Idaho. I'm in Colorado. We're all over the place, and it's great to have you all here. We expect our cousin Ruben Judd to join shortly. We did have a mix-up with the daylight versus Arizona time the last time he joined, so maybe he'll be a little late. I texted him. But I think, Marianne, we should start with the hot topics. And I think what a lot of people would be the most interested in is this news of the church's purchases in Nauvoo and Kirtland and how that relates specifically to our family. I'm going to turn the time over to you, but before we do, I'm just going to give everyone kind of heads up what our format is here. Marianne's going to lead a series of hot topics, and then we're going to have a preview of what our business meeting will be. That's the second hour. And then we're also going to have Ruben's presentation on the Turleys in Churchville, which is where they lived in when they first immigrated to the Western Hemisphere, if you will, from England, from Birmingham. They landed in the Toronto area. And so that's what Ruben was going to be presenting on. And so that'll be part of this first hour. After the first hour, we give people an opportunity to take a break, or if you have to go, we understand some people only have an hour to commit. Then we go into our second hour, which is more of our business and planning for future meetings and field trips and research activities. So we get more into the nitty-gritty of the business of the organization in the second hour. But for now, we're going to turn the time over to Marianne to lead us on these hot topics. And I might prompt you with some of the things we have on the agenda if you don't have that in front of you. But let's start with the Kirtland and Nauvoo news.
Right. And I was wondering, is Kay gonna oh, okay, we did get word that Becky Cushing, cousin of Carolyn and Laura, so she's also Anna Priscilla line. So we got that for the Robert Cushing label. Okay, so Kay, did you want to talk a little bit about the purchases? The recent purchases, or not really? Okay, you're muted, so we can't hear you.
I think he emailed me saying he was deferring to you to
he's deferring to me.
But Kay, if you have anything to
I'll
add,
defer to you, Marianne.
But if you have things
Okay.
to add, Kay, from your what you've learned from the Nauvoo history, we'd love to hear that too after Marianne presents.
All right.
Okay, so so basically what happened is that Community of Christ needed financial help, but they owned a lot of properties in both Nauvoo and Kirtland. And so they made a pretty difficult decision to go ahead and sell those properties. They've been in their hands for a lot of years. And so the church recently purchased all of the Community of Christ historic properties in both Kirtland, which included the Kirtland Temple, as well as Nauvoo, which includes everything, like all the mansion house. It includes Theodore Turley's property that was owned by the Community of Christ for many years. And so I mean, so now the LDS Church has control over all those properties, which means you shouldn't have to pay to see any of them. Community of Christ, you usually had to pay a nominal fee just so that they could kind of help take care of it. The LDS Church obviously has a lot more resources, and so they're going to be able to offer those. So the next time you go, if you ever want to see the church history sites in either Kirtland or Nauvoo, you'll be able to attend those sites for free. But yeah, I mean, the big thing is just that Community of Christ was pretty good about giving a straight up historical tour. Up until a few years ago, usually the LDS emphasis was more proselyting on these, but in the last 5 years or so, they've switched everything over. So it is a more historical presentation from my understanding. And then I can talk a little bit about specifically Theodore's time. He visited Kirtland a couple times, and then his time in Nauvoo, but I just wanted to open up if anyone else had any commentary about the purchases themselves that happened in the last couple months.
Let me just make a comment. We were there last summer, and it was still under the Community of Christ Church, but the guide that we had for the temple happened to be a member of the church that worked at BYU, and he would go back there and spend 2 or 3 weeks being a guide, volunteering guide for the Community of Christ Church. His tour was excellent. He knew what was going on in the temple, where it was, and when we'd been there previously, You ask about things going on in the temple, particularly the 110th section of Doctrine and Covenants. They didn't seem to even quite know what was going on and acknowledge that. But I think the quality of the tours of what you see is going to be significantly better than what it was under the Community of Christ Church. But it was a very good tour that LDS tour guide gave, but he would just go back there and spend 2 or 3 weeks in the summer volunteering to guide people around the temple.
Nice. Okay, so that is one of the things I know with the Joseph Smith papers, with the church's recent push for more historical transparency, and that they've just discovered a lot more stuff. We are going to be seeing there has been a lot more goodwill been established between the LDS and the Community of Christ churches. And so that's why Community of Christ did finally feel comfortable handing the reins over to LDS, is because that we are kind of emphasizing a bit more historical, and there is a lot more friendship between the two groups now, which is really nice. As far as Theodore's time, so I mean, it's kind of cool because we have in some of our histories the misconception that Theodore moved from Canada to Kirtland. And that didn't happen. That's a mistake. But he did visit Kirtland. So most of you know that in Churchville, he was baptized in March of 1837 by Isaac Russell. And then Parley P. Pratt came a little bit later and ordained him, I believe, a priest. But he ended up later that year. Joseph Smith and Sidney Rigdon actually came up to Canada in August, and so he was able to meet Joseph Smith at that time. But then in probably October time period, he actually went down to Kirtland to go visit. At that time, Joseph Smith was actually away elsewhere, so he didn't get to see Joseph Smith again. However, he did get to see Joseph Smith Sr., and he received a patriarchal blessing at that time. And then he also got to see some of the papyrus that they had, the Egyptian mummies. And the reason why we know these things is because then when he went back to Churchville, at the beginning of November, he wrote a letter to Isaac Russell, to the guy that had baptized him. And he mentioned that he mentioned that he had been down, that he had seen Isaac Russell's family, because Isaac Russell was on a mission in England at this point. And so he mentioned, he's like, hey, I saw your wife's looking great. She was, by the way, she was probably pretty big. She was 7 months pregnant at the time. He's like, and I kissed Sammy. That was the little 2-year-old little boy, Samuel Russell. And he said, and then he mentioned that he had seen the records and that he had also been able to get a blessing from the patriarch. We don't have a record of that blessing, but he did mention later on that as part of that blessing, he was blessed that he would go back to England and he would proselyte. And so he was really very anxious. Several times he'd gotten that impression that he would eventually go back to England. And we have on our website, you can actually, it links to the copy of that letter. And I am going to, maybe I worry a little bit about sharing screen just because it's harder for me to tell. Here we go. When people are coming into the group, but I will go ahead and share this. So this is actually, so it's in the collection of Isaac Russell correspondence, and this is the letter. So he wrote it November 9th, 1837. And then if you come down to a little bit, he says, I've been to Kirtland and I saw your family. I kissed Sammy. They was well. Never saw your wife look as well. I was highly gratified with a sight of the record and the patriarch. So Theodore could not spell to save his life. I don't know if you guys ever knew that. But that's Patrahak. Mr. Joseph was not at home because that's Joseph Smith. They were away. And then because Joseph Smith was being gone to establish 11 more stakes of Zion. And then something else that was really significant from this letter is that he actually mentions that his oldest son at this point had passed away. And that is the first time that we had mention of the death of this son, or that's the only mention we've ever had of the death of that son. A lot of people just assumed he died back in England because we didn't know what happened. So that's why that letter is pretty significant. The other time that he visited Kirtland was on his mission so after the family moves from Canada down to far west, we've got them eventually moving up to Nauvoo. And then after he finishes his home in Nauvoo, which was the first house built by a Latter-day Saint, he goes on his mission. And while he's going east on his mission to go to the British Isles, in November, he ends up getting to Kirtland. And a lot of the people are super sick. And so they decide to stay for a couple weeks in Kirtland while they're there. And so he actually mentions it in his journal, which is on the BYU Library website. And so we can, I won't share the screen here, but you can access it from our website. But in his journal entries, he talks about how they got there on November 4th and then they left on November 22nd. But he was able to get his washing and anointings in the Kirtland Temple, and that was really special to him. And so he actually talks a little bit more in detail about that in his journal. And that was really significant for him. So when you go to the Kirtland Temple, that was an important place for Theodore. He really valued his time in the temple. And that was in November of 1839. So that's Kirtland. Nauvoo, I've presented on, sorry.
Marianne, can I just ask a clarifying question? Just because there's a lot of history packed in there. And for everyone who's new to the call, Marianne is a wealth of information and she's put so much of it on the website, our family website. Please go there if you're looking for any kind of research threads you want to follow, because she's done a magnificent job. So if I understood, just in summary, where was Theodore first gathered with the saints from Churchville? He went to far west from Churchville.
In Churchville, he got baptized, and then later in the year, he still lived in Churchville. He went down and he visited Kirtland. He went back to Churchville, wrote that letter to Isaac Russell. His son Isaac was born. That's why he named him Isaac, just a couple weeks after he wrote that letter. But the next year, he moved with the saints to far west. So in the summer of 1838, at the end of July, he gets to far west, and then the war breaks out the next month. So he went straight from Churchville down to far west as far as gathering officially with the saints.
And so we all know he wasn't there very long, and he was one of the first to move to Nauvoo. Or what was commerce?
Well, actually, okay, so he was on the committee of removal in far west. So he was one of the last people to leave far west. A lot of the leaders of the church had been jailed. And so he was one of the few people that was still around. And so that's why we have the stories of him being confronted by some of the mobbers. In fact, in the history of the church, when you read about those last events in far west, a lot of those actually come from Theodore Turley's affidavit. And so it's actually his viewpoint, and then they just modified it in the history of the church to turn it into third person. And so that's another really important. If you go to the website under Theodore Turley in historical documents, all of these are linked. If they're available on the web, we've linked to them so that you can actually see the original documents. So he doesn't leave there until April. And on his way out, he meets with the 12 that are coming back to far west to dedicate the temple. So that's why he was there when the cornerstone of the far west. Yeah. So when that was dedicated. And then he goes to Quincy with all the other saints. That's where he fills out his affidavit of everything that he lost in far west. And then, so that's dated beginning of May. From Quincy, and then he goes up to Nauvoo. And there were houses in Nauvoo that had been built by previous residents, but Theodore was the first to build. It was just a little log cabin made of logs and stone. That's what he says. He was the first, I think, to start and finish construction on a permanent structure. Most of the people just lived in tents. But it was super rainy, so he mentions just they were constantly drenched. So he doesn't leave for his mission until after he's completed that little house. And so when they say the first house built by a Latter-day Saint, it's that little crude log cabin is what they're talking about on that one.
Great.
So
Does it help to show on the map? I did pull up a couple of views of Nauvoo to give people just to remind people where he lived in town and where this purchase of the property is. I mean, this purchase in February or January from the church, this included his property, right?
it did, because the property is on the same block. Yeah, we probably should pull up a map. I'm not seeing Ruben coming in quite yet.
We have
So,
plenty to talk about, so we're good.
okay.
I'll share my screen. This is Nauvoo. Many have visited. If you haven't, we'll try and orient as much as possible here. I'll just begin by saying, if you've been to Nauvoo, since they built a temple, here's the temple up on the hill. And then coming down to Main Street on Mulholland, you get to a lot of the historical sites. And the pageant areas right here. And then as you go south down Main Street and Granger, a lot more of these historical sites, you know, that are hosted by our church, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. But if you come all the way down to Main Street and Water, this is where the mansion house is. It says temporary closed because it's changing ownership right now. So the church is getting ready to reopen it. I think that's going to be shortly, isn't it? Isn't that
Yeah,
the word
I know
that's
they opened up a lot of them at the end of March, I think. They had purchased at the beginning, and I know a lot of the Kirtland sites opened back up at the end of March. I assume, yeah, I assume the Nauvoo sites will probably open up pretty quickly too, if they're not already open.
So here's the Nauvoo house that also changed ownership to the church, and the red brick store. So much historical events that happened here. But then on this corner of Hyde and Water was Theodore Turley's property. Is that right? On the northwest corner?
Yep. And so the properties, they were divided up into four, just, you know, like just four quadrants. Theodore was in the southeast quadrant. It was lot 4, and the block is called block 147. And so it's, a lot of times you'll see that particular nomenclature. So yeah, so here we go, block 147. He was in the southeast corner. He owned the eastern 3/4 of the lot. And in his lot, the log cabin was built in the northeast corner, so in the middle, kind of more middle of the block. So yeah, because it's the northeast corner of his lot. And then later on, he has a 2-story brick house that gets built on the southeast corner of his lot. And that's the house that we can actually, that we have a photograph of. And it's actually in the painting that we have that was done about in 1845. It's a painting of Joseph Smith by the Mansion House, and you can actually see the back of his 2-story brick house, which is really cool. And I'm sorry, I didn't prepare anything for this because I've been doing a lot of presentations this week. So.
That's all good. No, just what you know off the top of your head is great. Are there any questions from the group about this property in Nauvoo?
Well, didn't Theodore own some other lots that are, you know, now a little farther east? And were they previously with the Community of Christ? And if so, they probably transferred over. They're just orchards or grass now.
I am not aware that he owned any other property in Nauvoo. I know that in my family's records, they said that he did, but when I've verified, I can't verify that they owned anything. Theodore's lot right now is just grass. There's no buildings on his lot. His obviously that little log cabin didn't last very long. His 2-story brick house was torn down in the early 1930s. And then the property was sold by the grandchildren of the previous owners to the Community of Christ. There was property that was owned by one of his plural wives up to the north, and then the east, and I don't have that exact. And so it's possible that may have been considered Theodore Turley's property, but that actually belonged to one of his plural wives.
Okay, just in the records, because our family spends time at the pageant, helping there, and it seemed like on the records last year there were a couple of lots a little farther to the east that they had on their records. So we'll follow
So
up.
yeah, if you could send me that, or like even write it down in the chat, because I've been doing a lot of property research in Nauvoo, and I have yet to come across a different lot in the historical records that has been assigned to Theodore. But I can tell you that when my parents went to Nauvoo probably about 20 years ago, they were also told that he had multiple lots, and I have not been able to confirm that in the historical records.
Yeah, it'd take me a bit to find the documentation, but thanks.
But yeah, definitely send that to me so that I can verify it. Property records in Nauvoo are a little bit hard to deal with because they didn't keep really good records for the first 3 years or so. They just barely started doing deeds in 1842. And so a lot of it prior to that point was more like people would go up to Joseph Smith and say, hey, can you reserve me this and for this lot? And so it was very fluid. And so what it was is when they would finish paying off the lot, then the deed would be issued. And so, but sometimes they didn't finish paying off the lot. And so then, anyway, it can be really confusing to do research in the Nauvoo property deeds. But Theodore for sure did own that lot. He had his houses there. We have a picture of his 2-story brick house that was built after he came back from his mission.
Any other
that's on the website.
questions? Or I see Mike had a comment or question.
When I was there several years ago, and this may have been the same, there was a small sign the Community of Christ had on that property indicating that it was Theodore Turley's, and that's where the first structure was built after the saints got there. It was quite a small sign, and I don't know if the sign is still existed or has been changed over the years, or
Yes. No, it's absolutely there because it is significant that the first house built by a Latter-day Saint in Nauvoo is there. So you do have that sign there. In fact, there was a big celebration in 2014 where they actually had a tree planting ceremony to commemorate Theodore Turley building that first house. So that sign, it's on the same block as the mansion house. That is definitely considered historical. It's just there's no structures on the site that have survived. And so, you know, it's mainly just trees. It's an open field, but it is on the exact same block as the mansion house. Any other comments? I thought I heard someone commenting.
I think it was Carolyn.
This is Carolyn Wood. I was there last summer and they did have the markings, and in the visitor center they had a map. And she did mention that he did have other properties, and I'm not sure. I should have gotten it, but I wasn't sure exactly where they were located, but the guide there did mention that he did have other properties.
Okay, so that's one of my jobs now is to figure out what's going on with the other properties.
You have a mission now. One of my other question is, and I don't know if Kay or Marianne has any insight on this, maybe it's just conjecture here. Would there be any opportunity for development or excavation on the Theodore Turley site now that it's in church ownership, or I don't know if that's even in the cards?
Okay, so there was, under Community of Christ, there was an excavation of the property in the early 1970s. The only reason the excavation really happened is because they were actually looking for the copper kettle with the documents. A lot of you haven't heard that story. So it was ostensibly to uncover where that first structure was, but realistically, Community of Christ was really looking for what was supposedly a cache of documents that had been buried on Theodore Turley's property. That cache of documents, William Clayton mentioned in his journal that they dug up that cache of documents at the beginning of July 1844. They had buried it just before Joseph Smith and Hiram Smith went down to Carthage. They were worried that they wanted to make sure the records of the church were preserved. And so it's both municipal records as well as church records that were buried in this large copper kettle. Because William Clayton's journal is now public, it took, in the early 1970s, they didn't know that that cache of documents had already been dug back up. So there's not a whole lot of value in doing archaeological investigation on Theodore's property. I do know that some BYU students, about 10 years ago, I believe, they did do some ground penetrating radar to explore the property to see if there was much structures underneath. And from my understanding is there wasn't a whole lot there. So I don't know that they'll really have much incentive to spend money on an archaeological dig there.
Great. Any other
So-
comments or questions on the Nauvoo purchases? Great. Marianne, thank you so much for those updates. Other hot topics we were going to cover are the website updates, which is also in Marianne's area. Adrian, if you had any updates on the travel guides that we've been talking about in past meetings, even if it's just a brief update, we'll give you the moment to talk about that. And then Marianne, you had also talked about Memorial Day Cemeteries project, which is coming up, I believe. I understand that's part of Memorial Day activities. So why don't we tackle those three topics?
Okay, so website updates, I'll go into like more of the numbers and the details later, but realistically, I haven't been able to update much. I did create a new, this is kind of left over from the last meeting. We weren't able to go into some of these, but I did create a new cemeteries page. I've been able to go through, we did get a pretty good response from regarding the cemeteries project. We had several people email back and let me know who was buried in what cemeteries. I'll probably go ahead and do an email again this year.
This is for all descendants of Theodore Turley?
Yeah, that came back and were telling me where different family members were buried, because we had put a call out asking. And so we have that cemeteries project. So the cemeteries project page went from just like a dozen cemeteries to now like there's probably at least 100 listed cemeteries. So it's going to take a while to kind of like flesh out all of those. But we had a good response, and I'll be working on that ahead of Memorial Day so that by the time we actually send the email, probably, what do you think, beginning of May or something, that people will be able to view those and also have a chance to give me input to add wherever I'm missing. So what I basically did for the cemeteries page after we had done that is I went to our database, and then I basically just downloaded where any burial information for any descendant of Theodore Turley, I added that to the cemetery list, and that's what really exploded the cemetery list. So yeah, so I'll work on that, and then I haven't been.
Sorry, just to ask about that. Is there something specific about Memorial Day that we're targeting?
Just like Memorial Day is usually, well, I mean, there is like on May 15th, it's supposedly the World Family History Day. But Memorial Day, the reason why I want to target that is because most people will visit cemeteries either that weekend. And that's when we can start getting good pictures and good locations. Because when people are visiting cemeteries anyway, a lot of times they won't know that there's other Turley relatives buried in the exact same cemetery. So if they're already at the cemetery, it's kind of nice to know that, like, wait a minute, there's other people buried here that I'm related to that I wasn't aware of. So that's why I want to try to get the list filled out before Memorial Day. But also people are taking pictures, and those pictures we want to have available, because when you're looking for a headstone, if you don't know what it looks like, it can be really difficult to find it. So there's a couple different reasons why I want to have those available for Memorial Day. Does that make sense?
That's great. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, please go ahead.
Who was that? Was that Kay? Or
no, that was me. I was just gonna put a bow on the website updates too, because every 6 months we get to hear what new things Marianne's posted. For those who are new or returning, I'm just gonna keep plugging this the whole meeting. Go to the website. There's so much good stuff on there. I think one of the big troves is Richard Turley's biographies, excerpts that, you know, he's been working on his magnum opus for Theodore Turley's biography. It is not published, but we have the preview chapters, and Marianne's posted all those to the website. I think that's a huge value that we have there.
yeah, and I don't even think about that because that was like posted 5 years ago. So
Yeah. Some
But
people still
yes,
don't know about it or haven't.
so okay, so as far as resources on the website, so we've got the newsletter archive. So we have an archive of all the past newsletters. We've got Theodore Turley's biography. Just as a heads up, his installments are fantastic. They are dated. We have newer research now. But he also only goes up to he covers Theodore's entire mission, covers everything birth up to his entire mission, and then when he comes home to Nauvoo, and that's where the last installment has stopped. He used to do these installments in the newsletters. So if you go to the website under Theodore Turley, man, I'm still not seeing Ruben here. I'm gonna go ahead and just share my screen so I can show you guys where to access a lot of this. Okay, this is what I said, the BYU journal. But this is, okay, so can you guys all see the Theodore Turley Family Organization screen? Okay, so if you go to, you just hover over Theodore Turley and you go down, you can view his life sketch, which is a life sketch that we've just put together real quick. But as you go through, you can actually read his autobiography that he wrote himself. We also have Theodore Turley, a biography, which you can access right here. And this has a list of all the installments that appeared in all of the newsletters. And so we can go through, like I said, he just comes out to 1840. But the historical documents, this is where I really want you guys to know about this, because these are anything that's online. I have tried to include a link, but also I also link from those time periods any applicable biographical installments by Rick Turley. But you can come down the redress petition in 1839. That's when I need to do a link to that, the original copy, but we do have a transcript, so you can actually see what properties Theodore owned in Far West that he is estimating. Let's see. So, and we have the Far West Committee minutes. Apparently, I need to do his affidavit too. Maybe it's down here. Nope. Okay. So then we have records of his mission to England. This is where, if you link here, this is where you can find his missionary journal. And this is from the BYU Library Digital Collections. You can read the original journal and see his spelling, which is sometimes pretty interesting.
I'll
But
say in his defense that a lot of our English spellings were not normalized, that there are a lot of stuff that had to be standardized.
That is true. However,
he still struggles.
Consistently is spelling things. But one thing that's fascinating that I really love about it is that you can actually start to hear his accent as he's spelling, because he's spelling a lot of things phonetically. And so you can see that he's dropping certain letters, and it's actually his Birmingham accent coming through. So that is really cool. He gives a little summary of his life at the beginning of his journal, and then he goes through the rest of the journal entries. And then the census, whenever he appears in newspapers, the deed from Joseph Smith for his property on lot 4 of block 147. This is from the Joseph Smith papers. And so this is, like I said, the deeds were given a little bit later, but you can see 25th day of January, year of our Lord, 844. Theodore was given this property long before. It's just, this is the official deed that was given. And you can see that it's the eastern 3/4 of lot 4 in block 144. Other historical documents, we've got a letter from Theodore Turley to Brigham Young. We've got records from the overland travel, the original records of the list when he was in the Silas Richards Company. We've got census records. We've got this 1855 letter from Theodore Turley to Hosea Stout. This is when they're compiling the history of the church. and they want to get, Willard Richards had just passed away. They start to realize that a lot of people who were firsthand witnesses of what happened in Nauvoo, and especially the martyrdom, they want to make sure they start getting these people's stories down before they start passing away. And so they start sending out letters to people and saying, what do you remember about Joseph Smith? What do you remember about his last days? And so this 1855 letter from Theodore Turley to Hosea Stout, I believe we have transcribed on our, there we go. So he was living in San Bernardino at the time, and we have the full transcription here, but we also have a link to the original letter at the Church History Library catalog. And so you can actually read the original letter that he wrote to Hosea Stout. It's quite long because the point is they're trying to preserve the information before it gets lost, before people pass away. And so this letter actually talks about the last few days that Theodore Turley knew Joseph, everything he remembers from that. It's pretty incredible.
Is that transcribed and
it is transcribed on our website.
Okay.
I'm gonna go back right here. So the initial link goes to the transcribed. This was transcribed by David Roche Turley.
Great.
So yeah, so you can actually read it. He's tried to, give the original spelling, so you can kind of see that. So yeah, Sister Emma's nephew, Nepfue. That's nephew. Different things like that. But I actually love reading it because you can hear him come through. His probate record, a letter from Theodore Turley to his children. This is one area that I think is really valuable, is the historical documents. Obviously, there's places, there's a timeline, there's some fact versus fiction where we kind of debunk some of the most common myths. But
or substantiate them.
Or substantiate them, yeah. I mean, there's definitely some things that we can verify, and also just there's always new stuff. We're still discovering a lot of new stuff for Theodore. It's kind of crazy. Oh, Delisa Hargrove is coming in. Okay, now we've got Ruben.
Yes, welcome, Ruben. Thank you so much. And before we turn, we're gonna give Ruben.
Let's have Adrian, yeah, do her thing.
But I also just wanted to emphasize the value of Rick Turley's chapters that we have here. Maybe some people on the call aren't familiar with Rick Turley and his body of work, his career. Can I pick on Janet or Adrian to give a brief intro to those who may not know our cousin Rick Turley? I want to get other voices on the call.
Yeah.
Janet, you're maybe. Could you share a little bit, about Rick Turley and his contributions?
Well, the first I heard about Rick Turley was that he was writing a book. And this book, how long ago was that? 40 years ago? Something like that. And because he's been assigned by the church when he got into the church's history department to do other projects, this book has progressed, but these chapters online are what has been put on so far, right, Marianne? And so, if the book never gets written, these documents, I think, serve almost like the Joseph Smith papers, as you collect these documents, and then you can see the original things, and they are really valuable because they're original sources. So he's still working on it. I think he still could use volunteers to help with certain things if anybody's in the area and wanted to give some time.
That is true. That segues into our volunteer opportunity. That was part of our.
Let me just ask a question here. This project was the Theodore Turley papers, which is going to be a 2-volume affair. Is there any update on that, or is it kind of on hold since because of Rick's other assignments?
It last I heard, the missionary diary, they were going to start out with a publication of the missionary diary, where just like with Joseph Smith papers, they'd have the image of the paper along with the transcript. And last I heard, I thought that that was having more finishing touches, but I have not talked about that subject. I did see Rick Turley yesterday at a conference, and he mentioned he was going to try to be on this phone call, that he mentioned he wasn't sure if he would be able. So yes, he is like super busy working with he always has like 10 different projects going on. But I do know I had specifically asked him at a different time, are you still thinking that you're going to do that Theodore Turley biography? And he said yes. So he originally started researching Theodore Turley in the 80s when he was in college. Yeah, early 80s when he was in college. He got a law degree. He got hired by the church history department in 1980. He began in 1986. He was hired on in 1985, just after all the Mark Hoffman bombings. And so he has a really fascinating story about, they were just super suspicious of historians, rightfully so, which is why he ended up writing that book, Victims, which is about basically the church's perspective of the Hoffman bombings. But he worked in the church history department as well as the family history department. He's written a bunch of books. He's currently got asked by the First Presidency to write a new biography of Joseph Smith. So he's been busy with that. I know he's also working. So he's a big name in the history community. He is basically probably our biggest name family celebrity right now. Does that, I don't know. Does that help, Ted?
That's great. Yeah, and thank you, Janet, too, for your contribution.
He was also spokesperson for President Nelson, and that took up, that was quite a commitment. And I think our website is just a wealth of good things that we can read right now. We have enough reading on the website to last most of us the rest of our lives, I think, and it's good stuff.
Well, this is so good. I'm glad we could return to these basics and do a big overview of everything that we have available. We have about 5 minutes left in our first hour, and I did commit to our new participants that we would we'd keep it to an hour, and everyone's welcome to join the second hour. And Ruben, could I ask, could you kick us off in the second hour with your presentation? Do you still want to do that Churchville presentation for us? Sorry, I can't hear you. Are you on mute?
Yeah, he's muted. Okay. Now he's not.
Hey, Ruben, how you doing?
Hey, my apologies.
Arizona time gets us all the time.
I've been in Utah all week, and then I was in Dallas 2 days this week. So anyway, everybody told me it was in my family. They said, don't forget your meeting at 10 o'clock.
10 o'clock Mountain Daylight. Yeah, no problem. Would you like to kick off the second hour with the presentation that you had prepared, or
Yeah,
do you want to say that for a future?
I would, and my research into Churchville is my own research has been pretty I would say just superficial. I wrote a little biography of Theodore Turley, just to like a 4 or 5 page biography to put in a bigger book about ancestors. And I think I talked to the group about this project that I was working on to kind of put a bunch of condensed histories with some basic information. So Churchville.
Oh, so Ruben, we'll do that right at the beginning of the second hour. We'll finish up this first hour, and then we'll hand the time over to you. Does that sound good?
That sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you, Ted.
Yeah,
okay.
No, thank you. I just wanted to finish a couple little business items, and then we'll have a break before we jump into the second hour.
Okay.
And we'll turn the
that
time.
way I'll get it set up a little bit better. Okay.
Sounds great. Thank you. So Adrian, can you give us a quick update on travel guides? If there's not an update, just for the group, remind us what the initiative is.
So the initiative was to try and get together, kind of like we did, was it last time or the time before, where was it? I think David went through the Beaver trip so that everybody could, if you were driving down I-15 from Salt Lake to Las Vegas, you could stop in Beaver and see all of the different sites that are affiliated with Theodore Turley's family, all around there. I think that one is pretty decently put together. There was a hope to possibly get some information from Brent Turley and Rick if they made their trip down to Colonia Juarez.
They did not make it. Yeah, they didn't make it last year. But yeah, there's the Colonia Juarez travel guide too we're hoping to do.
So that one, and then also David Turley also did an overview of the San Bernardino trip that everybody went on. Was it 5 years ago, maybe? A while ago?
Yeah, I think it was 2018. Yeah.
Okay. Just be able to get kind of an easy access either on the website or something so that you could take your family and see all of those things, but those are still in the works.
They are still works in progress. I had worked on a bunch of maps for Southern Utah, and then I got derailed because I ended up finding out the location of Theodore Turley's mine. That is actually just west of Minersville. So that was an interesting little detour. Anyway, but they are still in progress.
Great, and we can talk about that more in the second hour. We're wrapping up this first hour. I just want to give my appreciation to all of you for participating. You're all welcome to join the second hour, everyone who can make it. In the second hour, we're going to hear from Ruben and his presentation on Churchville. And then we're going to talk about future meeting ideas. And if you have ideas to present, we're all ears. Some of the topics are digital archiving and preservation of, our current family, your current families, grandparents and beyond, documents that we're all trying to preserve. So that's a topic that we're going to discuss more. The family road trip ideas or, in-person gatherings. And then I just wanted to throw out there, we'll confirm this in the second hour, but for those who have to drop off, we're tentatively holding Saturday, October 12th at 10 a.m. for our next meeting. It'll be in the same format, same forum. So October 12th at 10 a.m. If that, we'll vet that in the next hour to make sure that works for the leadership, but that's the date we had. So again, thank you all for attending. We're going to take like a 30-second break. If you need to get water, I need to have a couple bites of my apple. And if you then continue with us if you can. If you can't, thank you so much for joining our call today. It's been wonderful to see everybody. Okay, I am back. Sorry for the radio silence. I guess no one felt too chatty. That's good. We're all getting gathered. For this next hour, we're having our business meeting, what we call our business meeting. Adrian's going to review our minutes as part of this. And we'll have a financial update from Kay, our treasurer. We'll have more detailed website and email updates from Marianne. And then any discussion topics for future meetings and making sure we're organized for our next meeting in October. I appreciate everyone who's been able to stay on the call. Have we had any new people join? Well, Ruben is going to introduce, before you start your presentation, I'll turn the time over to you in a second. Please introduce yourself. Where are you from? The little short bio. Ruben's our vice president. He didn't get to say hi at the beginning at the top of the hour. So, but was there anyone else who joined who's new or returning that would like to introduce themselves?
I'm seeing an Ann Anderson that I'm not familiar with. But they are currently muted, so I don't know if they will. But that's really the only name that I've seen that's new that's popped in.
And welcome to the call. Glad you're here. Okay, Ruben, I'm not sure how much time you had planned on. Is 10 minutes enough time for your presentation?
Yeah, 10 minutes is more than plenty.
Okay, so we'll go ahead with your presentation. And then, Adrian, can we turn the time over to you after the presentation? Anything I'm missing from the group as far as business meeting? Okay, we'll proceed.
Sorry, the mail carrier is just walking by and our dog. So he'll quiet down in a minute.
Okay.
I was trying to figure out how to, is it my turn right now?
Yeah, you can share your screen.
Okay. I didn't, okay. I will do that. Give me just a second here. Going to share my screen. Okay, so I was trying to decide how to present this information today. And I had written a small biography about Theodore Turley. It's about a 4 or 5 page biography that went into a bigger set of biographies for both sides of our family with our children. Went back about 5 or 6 generations. And so the idea was that we would be able to quickly learn about somebody and identify the attributes that they had in their lives that we feel like have been passed down to us. Attributes of things like, courage, or maybe they were extremely hardworking, or maybe they were problem solvers or something like that. Or what kind of spiritual attributes they had as well. Maybe they were very gifted and had real strong testimonies of Jesus Christ. Maybe they, and so it was that's what this project was about. But when the last meeting, when I heard about a memorial in Churchville that was placed at the cemetery by Richard Turley in 2017, I believe. I went and I looked at that information, and I thought that would be much more relevant, and that I would more introduce you to that site than try to, give all the history of Churchville. Essentially, Churchville, and this, if you do a Google search on Churchville, Ontario, Theodore Turley, you'll get to this website here. And I don't know if you're all familiar with it. So, if you are, then join in, because what I'm going to talk about is the information on this website. It's
Yep, that is our website, and that information I put there.
Okay, and I saw Mary Ann's pictures all over, as I think you helped author some of this, right? Were you there at the placement?
I was not, but Natalie Tanner was there, and she did a write-up in our newsletter, and so that's what I have, is her write-up.
Perfect. Well, and then I'll underscore what Mary Ann just said, which is that this information is also in a newsletter. But some of the things that I think are interesting is that the church grew in Churchville, Ontario. It was actually started by a guy. Churchville was named after a guy by the last name of Church. I think it was Hazael Church or something like that was his name. And it wasn't long after. I mean, it was about the time that he died, after having built this community, that Theodore Turley and Frances Kimberly moved to Churchville. They came from England, and I won't go into the history there, but they lived there until I believe it was 1838, when then they were with the other saints called to gather in Kirtland, Ohio, and so they moved their family there. Theodore made a trip before that to Kirtland, and then they decided as a family to move there. So he has
Yeah,
two.
they never moved to Kirtland. He did visit Kirtland, but they moved directly from Churchville down to Far West.
To Far West, Missouri.
Mm-hmm. And if you read the beginning of his mission journal, he actually talks about that.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for keeping me on track here. The so this village was established in 1815. I think that it's now, if I'm correct, part of a bigger town called Brampton. And this painting is of the prophet Joseph Smith coming into Churchville, I believe, and painted by how it might have looked in the 1830s. There's a picture of a building. It talks about that in this watercolor. The artist's description was it was visited by the prophet Joseph Smith in 1837, and the large white home in the center was an inn built in 1831 where the prophet may have visited. But this marker that was dedicated in 2017 was placed in the cemetery, and it was called Early Mormons in Churchville. And there's really great history about how Father P. Pratt and Brother Russell came to Churchville, and they taught and they baptized Theodore and his family. And I didn't know this, but it looks like about 2,000 converts moved from Ontario and helped settle or helped gather the saints and help colonize the settlements that they went from Churchville to. So there's history about the actual events that occurred in 2017 with the placement of that memorial. There are lots of related links here where it talks about Theodore Turley specifically and the research that was done, and there's Mary Ann's on the timeline. I think was when I went through that was particularly interesting.
Yeah, that's not actually me. That's his daughter, Mary Ann.
Whose daughter?
Theodore Turley's daughter.
Oh, okay. Well, Mary Ann, did you put together this timeline?
Yes, I did.
Okay. So here's a picture of the cemetery. This is views from the Turley property, Credit River, where Theodore and his family were baptized. And just some other information. So whenever I hear that somebody's from Toronto or up in that area, and I've met some of them, I ask them if they know where Churchville is. It's always interesting to see how many of them know where that is or was. I don't know if you have any other questions. I didn't want to say too much more at this point because I know that we're short on time, but this information was really interesting. There's some corrections. Theodore thought that he had been baptized by Father P. Pratt. I believe that Richard Turley brought forward the fact that Father P. Pratt wouldn't have been there at the time that he got baptized. So it was likely Isaac Russell that baptized him. And I would just say, there's a timeline in 1838 to leave, sell 75 acres, and leave has changed all of our lives because of those decisions. And sometimes I think that what Theodore and his legacy has given to me is the ability to put God first in your life, and then let happen whatever happens. And it must have been a sacrifice that none of us probably would understand completely for him to make, to leave and to go to Missouri with his family, and then all of the other things that he did. And we've talked about Isaac and some of the other ancestors. Anyway, I'm just grateful that I had a chance to get a little more information about his time in Churchville and what was going on there, and to know that somebody has already thoughtfully placed a memorial there, and now we can just enjoy it as a family. And that's all I have to.
Ruben, thank you so much. A lot of those details were great for me to hear, and a lot of it that I probably hadn't heard before. And I'm glad we have this resource and these this summary.
It's a very easy. It's easy to consume. You've got the timeline, places to visit, historical overviews. So if you ever are back in Toronto, you know, stop by the cemetery, you know, the river. You've got the river, and then you can see the memorial as well.
That's great. And I really appreciate you emphasizing the legacy of faith that we come from, and how that can really inspire all of us as his descendants. So thank you so much for that. We're going to jump right into Adrian's portion with reviewing the previous minutes from October 2023, and any other items you have, Adrian. If you could specifically let us know any action items that are still outstanding from October, that'd be great to know.
Okay. So the family meeting was held October 7th, 2023. 23 members attended the meeting, which was held via Zoom. Introductions were made by participants. Adrian Williams welcomed everyone, and an opening prayer was offered by Elise Boak. Marianne Clement shared excerpts from a video titled "Over the Years and Roads, a Virtual Tour of the Colonies in Mexico," narrated by Byron and John Hatch, which can be found on YouTube. Highlights included historical sites such as Colonia Juarez, Mata Ortiz, and Colonia Pacheco, offering insights into the Turley family history. Brent Turley provided an update on Rick Turley's upcoming book project on Joseph Smith for the LDS Church and their approaching trip to Colonia Juarez. Discussion ensued regarding a potential family trip to Colonia Juarez, and Natalie Tanner was willing to be the trip planner. Ruben gave us an overview discussion on Churchville, Ontario, focusing on Theodore's time there and his unwavering faith despite financial hardships. Information on his Kirtland visit and time in Far West was also shared. We then transitioned to the business meeting. 11 members attended the business meeting. A financial update was given by Kai Lovell, indicated $400 in donations with no expenses, resulting in an ending balance of $7,467.60. These funds are currently not designated for any projects. Opportunities for helping to improve information available on the website. Mary Ann discussed the need for video and photo contributions to enhance storytelling on the website. And the cemeteries project was suggested to document burial sites of Theodore Turley's descendants for easier family visits. Email and website report was given by Mary Ann, highlighted subscriber statistics and website traffic with plans to target high-value subscribers. Marianne also shared the Rushton family connection to Theodore Turley and possible burial location of the child that died December 1848 at winter quarters. Future action items included follow-up on Brent and Rick's trip to Colonia Juarez, planning potential field trips, live or virtual, to Mexico, San Bernardino, or Nauvoo. Our next meeting was scheduled for Saturday, April 13th, 2024 at 10 a.m. with proposed agenda items including trip follow-ups and further discussions on family history projects. And that's what I've got.
Thank you. I want to hone in on a few of those to-dos.
Okay.
One I heard was that Natalie was interested in leading or helping us with the trip to Colonia Juarez. That I didn't remember that, but that's great.
There were multiple people who wanted to go, but
has anyone on the call had any dialogue with Natalie since then?
I haven't talked to Natalie, but I wanted to mention, has anybody talked about Nancy Turley today?
No.
Oh, okay. Nancy she's my aunt. She was married to Wayne Turley, who passed away a few years ago. She served a mission. She just finished her mission in Zimbabwe. She was on the call last time.
Yes, I remember.
From Zimbabwe. She just finished her mission. And her and I have jokingly but semi-seriously talked about when she gets home, we're going to just get in the car and drive to Colonia Juarez. So it's a semi-serious proposition. So maybe it could solidify into an actual date and time, and maybe there are others who would like to do that. So, but I haven't talked to Natalie because I didn't know that she would be kind of the one heading it up. So, but
well, there's no reason not to have more than one effort. I think everyone knows
okay.
There's some complexities with getting to Mexico, into that part of Mexico too. Yeah, yeah. So there's a calculated risk that everyone has to understand in traveling to that part of Mexico. But yeah, I think there's opportunity to join a trip that you would take, Ruben or Natalie. And I'm interested in hearing anyone who makes solid plans, sharing that with the group, because I saw Jeannie raise her hand too, and interested in going to a trip like that. So if someone has travel plans, it's easier to follow someone else's itinerary maybe, or have someone to join. So yeah, please, Ruben, tell us if you and, I'm sorry, your aunt's name is Nancy. That's right. If you and Nancy plan a trip, who has dialogue with Natalie who can continue that thread with her?
Well, I mean, she's on our Facebook group, so yeah, I have contact info for Natalie. I can follow up with that.
That'd be great. Thank you so much, Marianne.
Yeah.
The other action item, I should have written them down as you were saying them, but one was our next meeting. Can we confirm that October 12th, which is the Saturday after next general conference, October 12th, 2024 at 10 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time is an acceptable time for our next meeting? I'm mainly looking at Adrian and Kay and Ruben as our leadership. I want to make sure that you have no personal conflicts.
Everything's good here.
That's fine.
Good for Marianne. Okay, Adrian, I don't know the formal rules of meeting, someone wants to,
I don't know if Kay has sorry, I do not. I've never done the motion.
We don't have to be
stuff.
formal. I just want to make sure it's solidified in your notes then.
Yes, it is in my notes. We got it.
Okay. And we're going to get to Kay's review, financial update, and Marianne's updates. Is that what you're asking about, Adrian?
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to put a bow on those action items that you brought up in the minutes. You mentioned Natalie, you mentioned the next meeting. I should have written down the other one that you had. Listed as an action.
One that I don't know if we discussed it this business meeting, but we did talk about having David Turley come and do a presentation on digitizing and saving all of the data and stuff that you guys probably have sitting around your homes. That, as Rick mentioned, when you pass, your kids are probably going to be, I don't know what this is, and they're going to throw it in the dumpster.
Yeah, go ahead.
I did talk to David. He wasn't able to do that this time, but he does think that he'll be able to join us next time and do that kind of a presentation.
I think that would get a lot of general interest, and it certainly serves the mission of this organization. So if anyone can like attest to his expertness in that category, yeah.
Yeah.
Can you talk about an accessible way too? Because I mean, some people don't have all the resources at their disposal. So I don't know, is he able to do like an expert level archiving and maybe dumb it down to the average archivist?
Yeah, I think that would probably be hopefully the end result, so that whether you've got access to like all of the large family history libraries that are here in Utah, or if you've got them in your stake center, or a few things that if you want, you can just purchase and have in your home to be able to do some of these things also.
I'm a big fan of that presentation. Will you be following up with him, Adrian, to get that on his calendar?
Yeah.
Great, thank you so much. Did anyone else hear any other action items from Adrian's minutes that we need to follow up on? Any other comments from the group at this point?
Yeah,
Mike. Yeah, Mike.
Let me just throw in a couple comments about your trip to Colonia Juarez.
Please. Oh yeah, Mike's in El Paso, yeah.
I live in El Paso. Our temple is across the river in Ciudad Juarez. They are two different temples. Everybody gets them mixed up. Even church headquarters gets the two temples mixed up. But I go over to our Juarez on a weekly basis. And yes, there's a calculated risk in going there, but I've never had any trouble in 25 years. I got some texts when Brent and Rick were planning on going down to the colonies. They were going down to meet a cousin, Marshall Turley. And there was a discussion about how unsafe it might be. But Marshall's comment was, he lives down in Colonia Juarez. He says he feels safer in Colonia Juarez than he does when he's in Mesa, Arizona. I'll just throw that comment out.
Please,
travels back
great.
and forth quite a bit.
I personally would feel wonderful going to Colonia Juarez, and I love visiting that part of Mexico, northern Mexico. So,
how far is the colony from El Paso?
About 150 miles, probably 2 hours, 2.5 hours. I don't know how.
Oh, it's only that far of a drive?
Yeah.
Did he comment on the safeness of the travel to the colony?
Travel is probably safe. The whole environment down there. Ciudad Juarez in the past has been the most dangerous city in the world for murders. I think it's currently about third on the list. So it's dropped down. That doesn't involve, in 25 years of going over there, I've never had any dealings at all with any problems with that at all. And I go over on a weekly basis. Yeah, there's a little bit of danger going down there, but going down during the day, I don't think is a problem at all. But there's a danger going over to Ciudad Juarez, and I do it on a routine basis and don't have any problem with that.
Got it. Well, that's great to know, and we'll take that into account. Maybe we'll actually accelerate our trip, knowing that, not worry so much about it.
Well, I think we might have found a tour guide.
What?
Mike? Is Mike the tour guide?
At least in the El Paso area. I got to stop in and say hi to you, Mike, on the way down there.
Yeah. So
I sadly have not been down to the colonies in about 25 years. I haven't been down there since they have the new temple.
Okay, then we got to pull you along.
Yeah. Well, I tried to go along with Rick and Brent and Doug when they were going down, and then their trip got canceled.
As far as weather's concerned, what's the best time of year to go?
I say the weather's very similar to El Paso's, and it's about that altitude. Spring might be better than the heat of the summer.
Yeah.
Spring or fall.
Depends if you like heat. There's not like a really rainy season. I guess you can account to that weather. It is more mountainous
Occasionally
in El
we get
Paso.
monsoon rains during the summer.
Yeah.
July and August. Occasionally, we are a desert.
Okay. Well, very good. Hey, can we go over to the financial update now?
Sure. One little correction that we've got to make is our balance at the end of last time. As of our meeting last when was it? October, I had not transferred the money from that had been collected in PayPal. When I got that in there, it ended up that we really had $20 more so our balance of last time should have been $7,487.60. Little activity this time. We had cash receipts only of $50, and we've had a lot of, I'll say, internet expenses that of $736.
Did we lose Kay? Is he still there?
I think we may have lost him. I can explain on some of those is that they were for the Zoom subscription for this to be able to last longer than 40 minutes. Okay, Kay, are you back on?
I'm back on.
Oh,
Perfect.
great. You want to continue where you left off?
So anyway, go ahead, Marianne, with what you were talking about with those
We'll let you take it, Kay. Go ahead.
All right. Well, our ending balance as of right now is $6,799.27. So it's dropped down a little bit because we haven't had any money coming in, but we've had internet and Zoom expenses and other things that have occurred.
And Marianne, you were saying we upgraded our Zoom subscription to be able to host?
That's part of the expenses is that is the annual Zoom subscription to allow us to have more than 40 minutes on our Zoom call. And then also I paid for 2 more years of hosting. So we are now paid up through, as far as hosting goes, through 2028. We have our domain name, it's through 2031. So that's the thing, like when I try to like buy them in the 2-year group, it's a little bit cheaper per month. So anyway, so that's why last year, our expenses were not quite as high, but this year they were quite a bit higher because I was trying to get a little bit better price per month for for hosting.
Well, our expenses in the future should be a little less than what they were this 6-month period. So
that seems like money well spent, very well spent. And I'm also interested in the Zoom, since we're on that topic, do we have the option of breaking out into groups? I would appreciate maybe having opportunities to break out into like groups of 3 or 4 for like 10 minutes during these calls. So people feel like they're getting to know someone personally in the group, you know, and have more opportunity for mingling, you know, since we can't do that like we used to in person.
So it does look like, yeah, on our subscription, we can create breakout rooms. So.
Okay. I'm going to suggest we do that next time. Maybe Adrian
Okay.
can help me remember.
Okay.
Is that the end of the financial report? Okay.
Yeah, I'm through.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for all your
not
work
much
with that.
going on. We are still
Okay.
registered in state of Idaho, and our reports have been filed with Idaho and Utah, so we're still legal.
Well, it's I guess my follow-up question is with you know, well over $7,000 in our coffers, what are we budgeting? Do we have a budget that we're trying to keep? Do we have any initiatives? Well, stating it a better way, do we have any obligations or responsibilities in using those funds towards any specific initiatives? Is that something we
Not
should
at this time, not at this time.
discuss? Okay, is that something we should put on the agenda for next time? I don't know if we have time to delve into that now or later.
We definitely could. Previously, all the funds that would come in were typically, we would have people pay a $10 yearly membership fee, basically, and that would pay for the physical newsletter to get mailed out. So most of the expenses were for the printing, mailing out of newsletters, and then also Hillary Turley, we would pay for her travel coming in. Because she lived in California at the time, but she did all the newsletters. And so those were the only consistent expenses we had. Obviously, we've had special projects over the years where we've paid for headstones. But as of right now, I mean, we do have website expenses, but website and Zoom are really the only consistent expenses, but I'm not aware that there's a specific budget right now.
And the licensing as well.
Yeah, but those are like the Utah business license I know is like $10. I don't know what Idaho is.
Those are minimal. There's no
Yeah.
fee in Idaho, just $10 in Utah.
Yeah.
So just guesstimate, like Zoom, website, licensing fees, we're talking the hundreds of dollars, right? Less than $500 a year.
Less than 500 per year. Absolutely.
So we're seeing that we have at least 10 years to 15 years in our coffers for those expenses. So I mean, I don't want to open a can of worms right now, but it seems like those generous donations, we would probably want to earmark them for something that serves the mission of the organization. I don't know what others think.
It depends on what comes up that we may want to spend money on.
Right. I mean, and that's the thing is that if people are aware of gravestones, we've determined in the past that that's been well within the scope, the mission of our organization. And so really it's just a matter of what needs we're aware of. I know sometimes we've played with the idea of possibly doing a scholarship or maybe a cash reward to get more involvement from younger people, whether, like maybe they'll write an essay or honestly, like they could create videos and family history. The problem is then you have someone who has to like judge it. Or
Oh, I'm a great judge.
I know, which it's not necessarily a bad thing. I think that would be something to think about for the future, is that I would love to be able to have some sort of financial compensation for kids, like for our youth, or teenagers, they're saving up for missions or for college. Some way for them to kind of be rewarded for them doing some sort of family history thing.
I really like that idea. I think that serves the mission and gets more outreach. Adrian, I'm sure you're capturing that. Can I just ask the leadership, and this is open to everyone, but a specific responsibility to leadership, to come to our next meeting with any ideas of how we could spend some of these funds to serve the mission. And Marianne, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to deplete funds. We got to, I'm sure there's a reserve we need to meet. To that point, maybe in our next meeting, leadership meeting, next business meeting, we should be talking about what a reasonable budget would be, what kind of reserves we should keep. I'm not an expert in this category, so if anyone is, please come to the table with that. But identifying expenses that would serve the mission of the organization, I think, is a great idea. So Kay, Ruben, I keep wanting to say Gus, but it's Adrian. And Marianne, of course, too. If you can bring ideas to the table for our next meeting of reasonable expenditures. I'd open that up to the whole group that stayed on the call. We'd love to get your input. We're so glad to have you on the call. Anyone else have ideas? Jeannie?
I just think it's a great idea to have a budget. Budget isn't to limit the expenses, but to find good ways of using it. And I think as we have ideas as to how those will be spent, it even opens up the possibility of, like, I don't know any of you. This is all like new cousins to me, which is awesome. But I have extended family that isn't even being touched. And I think as we have these ideas of things that we can do to build the family, that it's even another idea to reach out to them, to get them involved, even if it's just in a financial way of, say, we have something specific that we want to do. I'm glad to reach out and say, hey, we need $20 a person, you know, or whatever, to go to some of these things that will benefit our family in the future. So I think that's great to have a plan and ideas on ways that we can, you know, that they might not be interested in coming to this meeting, but they would love to stop by a site or do something that they see the benefits of their money that they are able and willing to donate for a good cause.
Great, thank you, Jeannie. Anyone else?
I just one thing that I think we're all trying to do and is really extend the amount of consumable family history that this organization can produce. So when I say consumable, just looking at the timeline of Theodore Turley and Churchville taught me so much. Simple timeline, outlined what was going on during that time. And I'm just throwing this out an example because it's kind of hitchhikes off the scholarship or the, you know, somebody writing an essay or something. But if we had somebody that, you know, anybody, it could be a teenager, it could be one of us, it could be, but we just say, look, we would like to pay somebody some stipend, $300, $500, whatever it is. And we would like to get a timeline of Theodore Turley's life. Now, maybe that already exists. I don't know. Maybe we want to break it down into timelines of this, that, and the other, maybe have multiple projects. But I see that as extremely valuable. And, you know, just let's utilize that, the funding to extend the family history work that's already been done and make it more consumable. And Marianne, I can see you're ready to go.
Yeah, we do have an existing timeline where we don't have the mission stuff. There's definitely still gaps in it. But when I do find, especially like when I found out he was living in Ferryville, I had just assumed he would be living in Canesville. I try to add those little discoveries to the timeline as I find it. But we do have a timeline. If you click on Theodore Turley, down below Joseph Smith biography, there is a spot that says timeline. And so, because to me, visually, that really helps me. And so I actually will go and I'll reference it a lot. Like when I'm like wondering where was he on a specific year. So.
And do we have somebody who's younger who would go and take that timeline and then do a presentation to this group or write something up about it? Again, it's about consumability and making our family history more consumable. Go ahead.
Yeah, I thought when you said consumable, you were going to go right into TikTok videos, you know. So
yeah,
that's an option too.
I don't use TikTok, but I would if there was something about Theodore Turley out there.
Yeah. But that's the thing, short-term videos are still very much, and kids are way better at just creating that short-term video. Because then you can, like, we do have a YouTube channel. I do have one thing posted there, and that's where I want to post other videos. But if we have little short-term snippets, you can share those on social media. You can share them. It doesn't take too long to be able to tell, you know, just a quick little story, and people are much more likely to consume that than they are necessarily to read a whole big essay or something.
Exactly. And so developing that concept of consumable history located in one or more locations that's easy to get to and then can be pointed to easily, I think is a worthy effort.
So you already got the juices flowing, Ruben. Let's all bring those ideas to the next meeting of what would be, you know, these types of expenses that we could bring to the table. Kay, can I ask you for one other thing in advance, or for that next meeting? Can you be ready to present to us the ongoing annual expenses? And that'll be a seed for our budget that we'll put together.
Yeah, I can do something like that.
And if you have any ideas of what what we might want to keep for reserves, if you could do research on what an organization like ours should have in reserves, I'd be glad to know your thoughts on that too.
Okay.
Thank you. This is great with the financial stuff. We also have website updates, and we have discussion topics for next time. So let's go into those website updates. If 5 minutes, is that enough, Marianne?
Yeah. I'll go real quick. Oh wait.
Oh, thank you,
Russ.
Russell.
You're on mute, Russell.
I think he said thank you.
I need to leave. Yeah. Thank
All
you.
good.
Okay.
Thank you so
Yep,
much
we'll
for
see ya.
joining.
Okay, so as far as the email report goes, we're still using MailChimp, which is a free service. It's actually kind of funny. We're actually grandfathered in on a free service, which is kind of nice. But we currently have 910 current subscribers. We are down 14 from our last meeting. But 6 people unsubscribed, 9 were found invalid, 3 people passed away, so that's why I took them off the list. And then we have 4 new subscribers. So we do have people submitting their emails through the website, through the contact us form. We have been having that, which has been good, fantastic, or updating their emails. There was 2 email. What?
Oh, finish your thought on emails, and I have a question on emails.
Okay, so we did send out 2 emails since our last meeting. It was just the March save the date and Roots Tech thing. 47% of the people opened that, so that was 425 people. And then we had 68 people that actually clicked on a link. And then just a couple days ago, we sent out another one. 44% of the people opened that, and I didn't have any extra little articles and stuff on that, so only like 1% people clicked on a link, as far as I know on that one. And then, okay, so what was your question, Ted, on email?
Oh, I just thought when you said that the folks who had passed away, that you removed them from the list. I don't know if you have a time span before you do that. I would think I would hope most people have a legacy plan so that whoever takes over their email may see those communications. In an ideal world, we would have someone, if, for instance, when my dad passed away, hopefully one of us children, if I wasn't already involved, would, take the torch from him, have someone in the family to replace that name. I don't know if there's an opportunity there to have outreach when someone passes away.
There might be. Usually I get notice that someone's passed away because their email is bouncing back. And so it's their email isn't working anymore. And so I'll usually kind of check on some of those people and see what's going on. It's not always that they've passed away, but every so often we will get that. More often people's if we're having problems sending emails, it's just people's inboxes are full, or it's an old email address that they don't use anymore. So
thank you.
Yeah. And then as far as the website report, we use SiteGround as our host, and then WordPress is the platform. Obviously I paid 2 years ahead of time for hosting, which is the big reason why we had the bulk of that. 2023 end of year, we had about 3,700 views, 1,700 unique visitors. The top pages were Life Sketch. One of the top pages was that Theodore Turley, a biography, that list of all of Rick Turley's installments, that's like one of my favorite things to see on the top list, because that's what I really want people to know about. As far as 2024, year to date, we've got about 1,400 views and 600 unique visitors. And so the top pages in here, actually, the top page was the first house built by a saint in Nauvoo, which is Rick Turley's biographical chapter on Theodore's Nauvoo property. So I thought that was really fantastic. That means people are paying attention to the current events. And then just a Life Sketch and just a couple more, but that's pretty much the website report and email.
How is the maintenance going? Or do you feel overburdened with that? Do you need help, or is it? I mean,
there's a lot. I think I had delusions of grandeur when we first started that website, so I still there's still lots of pages where it's like more information forthcoming and like that I haven't gotten around to. So I will say I have a lot of other projects going on. I will say that there is actually a book coming out where I have a chapter about Theodore Turley and his plural wives in Nauvoo that's coming out next month from Signature Books.
Wow.
It's called Secret Covenants. And so it's talking about
Congratulations.
it's talking about early polygamy. And so because Theodore Turley was a polygamist in Nauvoo in that early plural marriage, I really focus on his 3 plural wives and their stories because they have some fascinating stories. But just as a heads up, like that's coming out. Obviously, Rick is going to have stuff, but I'm hoping to try to get more publicized because we've ended up finding out a lot of not just new things, but finding out that a lot of the stuff we thought was actually wrong. And so the website is one of the big ways that we're trying to do that. One of the difficult things with family search is that people are always changing things. It's a good and a bad thing, but the website is where we're trying to put the newer research. We're trying to source everything. We're trying to make that a good, and that's great that Ruben Judd found it through Google. That's exactly what it's there for. We want people to find it through Google. We want people, if they type in a question Google about Theodore Turley, we want our website to come up first. So.
And that was Churchville history, and that was a
Theodore Turley.
And the Theodore website was 3rd.
Yeah.
I mean, it rose to the top. So I think we're doing, without having to pay for that search result, I think that's pretty good actually. Hey, I had a question. This is kind of off topic, but it relates to, I think, what Marianne's talking about, which is there are some important things, some I call them little anchor things about Theodore Turley's history. What about the property that the church just bought? Have we already talked about that today?
Yeah.
Sorry, you missed the first hour.
No, that's
Yes,
fine.
we talked about it.
No,
it's recorded, right?
That's perfect. But is that maybe somewhere already, and is it emphasized, and are there pictures already?
I think when I was thinking back on it, I think most of those pages are still works in progress. I'm not sure that they're actually up. I think the best resource right now is that Rick Turley's installment, which is why I was really happy that that was one of the top results. It's installment number 11, the first house built by a saint in Nauvoo. I think they're still under construction, the websites that I was planning to have that up at. So that's
Great.
one of my action items to do before the next meeting.
And I would be glad to help you, Marianne. I think that's really what I'm trying to say, is that I think this is a significant event that just happened. And, it'd just be nice again for me to, without having to travel to Nauvoo, I can connect with, this is where he was, this is the block he lived on, this is a quote by Joseph Smith. Those things just cement my love for him in a very simple way.
I see Jeannie had a comment too.
Yeah, I know one question that my family would have. In fact, my daughter even just came in for a second of the meeting. And is there any thoughts that there would be a house or reenactment type thing rebuilt on the property? Is a big question that I get all the time. Now, and especially now that the church owns it and it's more in the realm of that, is that anything that has ever been discussed or thought about?
It has been
Nauvoo.
discussed. I know when Rick Turley has mentioned, he said it's unlikely. Like I mentioned, they've done ground penetrating radar in the last 10 years on the Turley property. There's just not a whole lot of evidence left of where the structures are. I mean, there is decent, but I just don't know that they would really want to put the money towards those projects for the Theodore Turley property. I think that they have more higher value things that they would probably put money towards.
What could we build on the site for $7,000?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, it's obviously a huge project, but I think that in general, if we have, I mean, thousands and thousands and thousands of family members, if that might be the one place that we are most visual, it might be on that corner lot in Nauvoo, that putting, whether it's a little log cabin or the brick house, that we are able to tell all of this history to not only our family visitors, but anybody else that walks past the mansion house, which is anybody that goes to Nauvoo. That could just be maybe more worth our money than almost anything else we could do, because that's where the traffic is.
Yeah,
Maybe
and
we
I
should
do
build
know.
the ale house there. Put
Sorry,
his
what?
ale house
Oh,
on
the
there.
Good
brewery?
idea, Karen. That's a good idea, Karen.
Let's rebuild the brewery.
Yeah.
So I do know that people asked about this at the 2014 event. They were thinking like maybe we could rebuild his blacksmith shop, which by the way was also the brewery. He had them together in one building. What Rick was saying is like these are millions of dollars worth. That it's not thousands, it's millions of dollars that's needed in order to reconstruct these buildings. And I know they already have blacksmith shops in Nauvoo. They already have that stuff. So if we had a really wealthy family member who could donate a couple million, I think that would be great. I think it would be very difficult to come up with millions of dollars on our own.
Why
So
did they say
that's-
it would be millions? What it would, I mean, I'm just, because to build the house isn't that much.
No,
So
it's
where
not. It's
is
to
all of
get
that?
the historical, because they're trying to reconstruct the historical buildings. And so it's to get that, to try to use materials that if they aren't the actual types of materials they would use, at least they need to look like the type of materials that they would use, and to bring in the experts in order to be able to build it all. And I know that like when I was visiting some of the church's newer historic sites, it's fascinating that they actually had ventilation built in, like modern ventilation, so that it was air conditioned, but they were trying to hide it through all of the different stuff. So then you have to make it accessible for people, like, you know, handicapped, wheelchair accessible. And so there's a lot of hidden cost to it that people don't realize how much it actually costs in order to do a historical reconstruction of the building.
Most of those
Does-
buildings also have tornado shelters because of the
that-
weather out there
that's
too.
true.
So yeah, there's a lot of expenses for sure. I'm not surprised it's in the millions. But yeah, that wouldn't surprise me at all.
Right. I mean, it's definitely lots of people. I mean, that is a question ever since I first started getting in the organization. They're like, we need to do it. We need to build a reconstruction. I don't know realistically that it's gonna happen. But what is realistic though is us putting together these guides so that Turley family members or descendants of Theodore, when we go to Nauvoo, we can have a specific guide that says, you know, this is where, because we have the archaeological report that they did from the 1970s. I'm still trying to get that stupid archaeological report from more recently from BYU, but at least from the 70s, we have the approximate location of the original little cabin, and we have the approximate location of the brewery, the foundation of the brewery and blacksmith shop. And his house was a little bit below that. So that's something that, for me, the maps are always a great resource, like just visually to be able to see where these buildings were. So I think that's probably where we want to spend. If we're going to spend money, I would probably want to spend more money on those.
Yeah.
But I don't know. But
Great call.
luckily it's a group. So it's not just my opinion. So it's also the group.
No, we need to bring big ideas. I'm glad you did, Jeannie. I mean, it's all worth discussion. And who knows where the big donors are? You know, maybe there's people interested in big projects.
Well,
you
and,
know? So.
and you know, it could be baby steps too. I don't know if the church would allow, you know, this property was owned by Theodore Turley or whatever, and he had this, you know, it's just of something of a plaque or something. So as people walk by the property, they're able to see that this is where, or maybe they've already built.
There is a plaque. There is
Yes,
pre-existing plaque.
Well, that's great. I mean, so we can start with stuff like that. There's a lot of things you can do virtually to say, imagine this cabin and you know, portray what it may have looked like visually.
Is there a QR code or something on that plaque that would lead them to the family website?
Oh, that's a good
Probably
idea.
not, because the plaque, as far as I know, would have been put up by Community of Christ. I think years
That would be
ago.
awesome if we could even just somehow add that takes it right into it, and some of the pictures and some of that stuff would be awesome and
Oh,
easy.
that's a great idea, because we know that since it no longer is property of Community of Christ, those signs are going to be taken down. So we need to be in the conversation, or it would be nice if we could be in the conversation of what that replacement sign would be. So who is our best? We need to get in contact with Nauvoo Historical, or the church missionaries out there in Nauvoo. I don't know if Rick Turley would have
Rick
direct
Turley would
access
probably
to
be the
them.
one that would have the best connections to that.
Who in this group is best connected to Rick Turley?
On the faces on the screen right now is Marianne.
Probably me, but I would
And we
not
have
say
Luana, but we have
Luana
Luana,
is the one who's probably the best connected.
and we've got Lewis. Sorry, Anne Lewis,
Yes.
and we've
The
got
problem is she's in Germany right now. So
yeah, but these kind of conversations, maybe that would be something very interesting to her. So Adrian, you've captured that too. So I don't know where we take that from now. We only have, well, actually we just ran out of time. I just want to make sure that we've gotten through our whole agenda, and if we haven't, we know what we need to pick up next time. This is great dialogue. I love this second hour. I wish more people could stay on, but I'm glad that we don't we give them the opportunity to drop off if they have to.
I just wanted to say hi to Tony Powell. He's also Anna Priscilla Turley Van Wagner.
Hey Tony, how you doing? You're on mute. Can you come off mute for a second? I don't know if you got that.
Now?
Oh yeah, we can. Where are you calling in from? Where are you located?
Camas, near Camas, Marion, Utah.
Nice, up in the mountain areas.
Yes, I planned to be here earlier, and I was outside doing some work, and I thought I'd better come in because you were coming on, but I think I got into the very last end of it. So I'll try
you
to
just
do better next
joined.
time.
Oh, we're so glad to have you on. And Marianne, you guys are closer cousins? You're through the same
No, he's closer cousins with Carolyn Wood.
Wood and yeah.
We had more of your cousins on earlier. They've
Yeah,
left
you
now.
should have quite a few of them.
Well, so good. I did want to ask on the website stuff, Marianne, would it be helpful to have an assigned assistant webmaster to help you?
Yeah, I think it's always a good idea to have multiple people. I mean, at least I can share passwords with in case, anything happens to me, at least someone else has all the passwords and the access. So if anyone would be up for helping out with that, I'd be happy to take them on.
Well, we're down to the final 9 here. Anyone want to help out Marianne as an assistant webmaster? If not,
I'll be a plan B.
Well, this
Oh,
would
great.
be a good one because I know like my kids, some of them, I don't know if they'd be interested, but the kids learn all this stuff in school anymore.
Oh yeah.
Pull some of them in.
Yeah, it's just whether they're committed enough to do it. Well, and it might be a light lift. It's just like Marianne said, having the passwords, being a second person. And then also you just have all these projects that you're trying to maintain, or all these updates, the maintenance of the website. It seems like it would be nice to have a second person to help with that effort.
Yeah, I agree.
Marianne, my offer stands about the general concept of consumability. So I think Jeannie just brought up a great little project, and so I'd be glad to work with you on that. And if it means that you need me to help maintain the website or whatever, I'm glad to learn how to do that. I don't know how to do it. I haven't been as hands-on with websites as
I don't think there's a technical need, right, Marianne? You would do the technical need. It's just the content updates,
A lot of it is content that we need.
Organization. Okay.
Mhm.
I'd be glad to help out with that. I have a quick question for Jeannie. How did you get connected?
I got the email. I saw the email. I used to years ago. I loved receiving all the emails and different things. And I don't read my emails. And I just noticed and I was like, oh, I would love to, to go on and do it and be more involved. I mean, I took it and sent it out to all of my family and all my kids and everybody else and was like, hey, but nobody came. So we're going to have another meeting about that. But,
we all
anyway, I
experience
love
that.
just, I mean, in fact, I thought it was awesome to get the tour of the website because I think I'm going to have my own little family home evening with my extended, 50 of us or whatever. And just to have them be more familiar with all of the information that is available and these road trips and things like I'm going to be, I just planned, Brian had for the 4th of July. So I had planned on going to Beaver, but I didn't know. I was like, I need to research that out and see what's in the area. And now I know that there's road trips there. So there's so much great information that I think that it's even, and I know you guys are all the experts that it's been doing for years, but I think it's great to do some outreach things to find new, because I think that there's people out there that love it and are engaged in it and want more information, but for whatever reason, just like it's busy and they, go somewhere else. So I think even just re-asking and finding, new people in our family to have their email addresses or new invitations to get involved, even with smaller things. I think it's great because I think that people love the family, want to be involved, but just don't always know exactly how, when, or what to do.
Well, I'm so glad we had you recorded saying that, Jeannie, because it's such a, we're all being recorded today, but I almost want to just capture what you said and just remember that, that outreach is so important. Thank you, Marianne, for always getting the email blasts out there. We're so glad you joined the call and that you spread the word. Yeah, we have so much to explore and to be proud of with our ancestry, and it's so great to be here together. I'm gonna do one final call to Kay, Ruben, and Adrian, aka Gus. And is there anything I missed from our agenda that we need to pick up next time?
I don't think so, but is this meeting available for consumption? Like if I send out a link to my kids and say, hey, your assignment is to, watch this. This was a family meeting. I want your ideas about how we can improve or something like that. If I just request it or invite them to watch this.
Yeah, usually we have them kept in the cloud recording for Zoom. And so usually I'll share the link in our Facebook group and then with our, with an accompanying password. If you're not in the Facebook group, let me know. Just send a reply to the Theodore Turley family email that you got. Just send a reply to me and I can send the link directly to you too. Ideally, I'm hoping to be able to put up past meetings on our YouTube channel so that I don't have to pay any extra to Zoom for storage fees. But I do want to get those older meetings up so that people can watch the older presentations that have been done.
And if we have volunteers, younger or longtime participants, putting timestamps onto those recordings is so great. And a 2-hour meeting can be very intimidating for someone. They're like, oh, 2 hours. I don't know how I'm gonna engage with that. But if there's timestamps that say this is when we talked about the new purchase of the properties, or this is when we talked about Kay's financial report. I want to see that.
I think I just joined the Facebook group. I didn't know that I wasn't a member.
Yep, that's a great resource too.
I mean, that's even another outreach thing that could be included in the email. I don't know that goes out just to join that because that's anyway. Sorry, I guess it's good to have a new face that doesn't know anything.
No, it's so
all
good.
The things they don't know.
Thank you so much. Well, I'm so excited the Francis Turley line was so well represented today. I think we had 6 of us, which is a good high water mark probably for us. That was really great. And I picked on my sister for saying the opening prayer. Can I invite my cousin Mike to say our closing prayer? I think you're on mute. Let's see.
Okay, can you hear
Try
me
again.
now?
Yes, we're good now. Thank you.
Father in heaven, we bow our heads before the end of this Theodore Turley family meeting. We are grateful for the opportunity we have of meeting as family and friends. We ask that thy spirit would be with us as we take on our assignments and responsibilities and do what we can to further the goals of the Theodore Turley family organization. We're grateful for being members of thy restored church and the blessings it has in our lives, and ask that thy spirit would be with us as we all go about our many activities and be able to return together to join as a family again in the future. We're grateful again for all thou hast given us, Father, and say these things in the name of Jesus Christ.
Amen.
Thank you so much. It's good seeing you
Thank
all.
you.